In a moment that stunned the world, King Charles broke down in tears as he officially stepped away from the throne. After decades of waiting, his reign ended not with glory, but with heartbreak behind closed doors. Family confrontations, health battles, and Diana's haunting legacy left him no choice but to let go. The palace announcement that shook the world. The moment the news broke, everything stopped. Just after 10 a.m., Buckingham Palace released a carefully crafted statement, only 73 words long, that would change the monarchy forever. In its opening line came the words no one thought they'd hear in this century. His Majesty King Charles III has informed the Privy Council of his wish to abdicate the throne effective immediately. Silence fell across the nation. Major networks interrupted regular programming. Church bells across parts of London rang out in confusion, not celebration. British Airways reportedly delayed flight mid-boarding to announce it to passengers over the peer system. The BBC switched to formal black suits. This was not just breaking news, this was history happening in real time. It was the first voluntary abdication by a British monarch since King Edward VIII in 1936. But this wasn't about scandalous love or exile. It was about exhaustion, about letting go. Unlike Edward's impulsive farewell, Charles' exit had been planned quietly behind palace doors for weeks. Insiders now say the final decision came after a closed-door emergency meeting of the Royal Council at Sandringham, where the king made his intentions clear. He knows longer had the strength or the heart to continue. The statement released by the palace called the abdication voluntary but emotionally complex. And it was the timing. Raised eyebrows. There was no build-up, no formal lead-in from public advisors or press. Just an hour before the statement, the palace website still had a live countdown to Charles' next engagement. Within minutes, that page was wiped. But the clues had been there for months. Charles had cancelled multiple public appearances earlier in the year, citing routine health checks. Reports of growing strain between Charles and senior royals, particularly William and Princess Anne, were whispered in insider circles. His wife Camilla had vanished from several key events, sparking rumors of tension behind the scenes. Now it all made sense. The abdication wasn't sudden, it was a slow unraveling, one the palace tried to contain until it couldn't. Inside royal circles, the phrase being passed around is simple but striking: he bowed before he broke. Foreign leaders responded with restraint. The White House issued a statement of respect for a reign of service. European royals called the moment a chapter ending with quiet dignity. But in the UK the feeling was more raw. For many the news brought closure, for others confusion. A few wept, many sighed. And across the country one question lingered louder than the rest: what finally broke him? The answer: heartbreak, illness. Legacy was soon revealed. But even in abdication, King Charles made no televised speech. Only a typed note signed "Charles argued that read for the good of my family and the country I love, I step aside. With gratitude, with reflection, with peace." But insiders say his emotions were far less composed in private. Because while the world absorbed the shock, Charles was breaking in silence in private, and in full view of the crown he had waited a lifetime to wear. The private struggles that led to his decision. Behind the gold-trimmed the curtains and gilded halls of the monarchy was a man collapsing under invisible weight. Sources close to the palace say King Charles's abdication was not a decision, it was a surrender. To time, to pain, and to a truth he couldn't outrun. Insiders describe him as a monarch who never truly settled into the throne. From day one he walked in the shadow of two women, his mother Queen Elizabeth II, and his first wife Princess Diana. One a global symbol of endurance, the other a permanent echo of loss and unfinished legacy. Now both legacies were staring back at him in failure. Health problems had quietly returned. Insiders revealed Charles had been battling recurring fatigue, chest tightness, and extreme emotional swings. Royal physicians urged him to reduce duties, but Charles, famously stubborn, insisted on carrying on until he couldn't. But it wasn't just illness, it was heartbreak. Prince Harry's continued public attacks, memoirs, interviews, and sharp criticism of the monarchy left Charles deeply wounded. Sources say he was especially affected by Harry's implication that he had been an absent father. One aide shared that Charles would read old letters from Harry late at night, then sit alone in the palace chapel, And then there was Camilla. While she remained loyal, Camilla's public standing plummeted after a series of missteps and growing calls for her removal from ceremonial roles. Charles reportedly felt personally responsible for dragging her into the line of fire. A family friend revealed he felt like a man being tugged in every direction and failing them all. But perhaps the final crack came with the realization that William and Catherine had quietly become the face of the monarchy. Their popularity, their composure, and their ability to connect with the public cast an unintentional but undeniable shadow over Charles' reign. He knew the tide has turned. In private, he confessed to a close aide, "I waited my whole life to become king, and now that I am, I feel less seen than ever." It was a heartbreak no crown could mask. A man raised to be king, educated for it, trained for it, shaped by it, now haunted by the possibility that he was always meant to be a placeholder, not a ruler. And so after decades of waiting and barely 2 years into his reign, Charles let it go, not for weakness, but because he finally saw the truth. The monarchy would not survive if it remained stuck in the past, and that past, his past, was no longer welcome at the throne. William's confrontation that changed everything. It was a conversation years in the making, but one that took just minutes to change royal history. Inside Clarence's house, the doors were closed. No aides, no note-takers. Just a father and his eldest son, King Charles, and Prince William sitting in the Blue Room, the same space where Charles once spoke about his plans for a modern monarchy. Now those plans were unraveling, and William wasn't there for polite discussion. Sources say the room was tense from the start. William, usually measured and diplomatic, had reached his breaking point. He began with a single sentence. "The public has already chosen Dad, they just haven't been asked." Charles reportedly sighed, rubbed his temples, and asked if this was about holes, but William shook his head. "This isn't about numbers, it's about trust, about what people see and what they don't believe anymore." The conversation grew heavier. William spoke about the deep disconnect between the monarchy and the people, citing his father's strained appearances, Camilla's fading support, and the growing pressure from Commonwealth nations questioning the crown's direction. But the most powerful moment came when Diana's name entered the room. William reportedly said, "Mom warned us this would happen. She knew the crown could be used to cover pain instead of healing it. That's what it's become." Charles, it was too much. He reportedly stood up, visibly shaken, and muttered, "Maybe this crown was never truly mine." That line would later become a defining quote behind the scenes. Notional trigger that marked the beginning of the end. According to insiders, William softened in that moment. He wasn't there to humiliate his father, but to make clear that the monarchy could not survive another decade of confusion, scandal, and fatigue. He told Charles plainly, "I'm ready, but the people won't accept it unless you're the one who steps aside." Charles sat down. He didn't speak for several minutes. When he finally did, his voice was quiet, barely audible, and full of weight. "I always thought I'd have more time." The confrontation didn't end an argument, it ended in resignation. That night, Charles reportedly wrote 2 letters, one to the Prime Minister, the other to the Privy Council, informing them of his intent to abdicate. He also penned a private note to William that simply read, "Led well, make it mean something," and with that the handover began, not with ceremony, but with the son doing what a father no longer could. As Camilla, resistance and isolation. If King Charles had made peace with his decision, Queen Camilla had not. The moment she was informed of the abdication plan, Camilla exploded. Palace insiders say she was furious, blindsided, and convinced it was a coordinated move by William and Catherine. She reportedly accused several aides of betrayal and demanded that Charles issue a statement reaffirming her continued role in royal life even after his departure. But the answer was no. By this point, Camilla, his influence had already been stripped back. She had been excluded from key briefings or public appearances were thinning out, and no, her name was noticeably absent from the first draft of William's regency plan. She was being written out, and she knew it. One senior aide claims Camilla screamed, "They've been planning this behind my back, and you let them." Charles, exhausted and emotional, did not fight back. Instead, he quietly told her, "It's time, Millie, it's over." That was the moment it broke. According to those present, Camilla stormed out of the room in tears, slamming the door behind her. She locked herself in her private chambers at Buckingham 4 hours. Later that night she refused to appear on the Queen's gallery balcony, even as Charles prepared to deliver what would be his last royal address. And the final blow, she was informed by royal legal counsel that she would not retain ceremonial power or patronage roles after Charles stepped down. She could keep her title privately, but all future royal duties would pass to Catherine. Camilla refused to sign the documents. By morning her staff were notified of reassignment. Her security team was reduced. Her name was quietly pulled from the court circular. She had been queen. Now she was not. She was offered residence at Sandringham, as would far from the public eye. But she reportedly replied, "I will not be exiled while that girl wears my crown." Still, no one stopped the transition. No one delayed it for her. Camilla had become isolated, alone in a palace that no longer needed her and no longer listened. And as she vanished from public view, Catherine stepped forward, calm, silent, steady. The era of Camilla was over, and the next chapter, shaped by Diana's memory and William's quiet resolve, was ready to begin. The final goodbye. Charles's emotional speech. The blue drawing room at Buckingham Palace had witnessed countless royal gatherings, but never anything like this. This time there were no cameras, no press, no palace choreographers guiding the tone. Just King Charles standing in front of the staff who had served him faithfully for decades, and for the first time in his life, he had no script. It was a quiet gathering, intimate, respectful, and painfully wrong. Dozens of staff members had been summoned with little explanation. Most expected a briefing on Charles's health, or perhaps a formal introduction of Prince William's regency role. What they got instead was a goodbye. Witnesses say Charles stood by the marble fireplace, trembling slightly as he placed his notes down. He looked around the room, then said, "I don't know how to start this because I never thought I'd have to." From the very first word his voice cracked. He wasn't the king in that moment. He was a man letting go of the only life he had ever known. He spoke about his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and how she never wavered, how she led with silence and steel, while he had often led with feeling and flinched under fire. He admitted he had fallen short of her example, but hoped he had not shamed her name. He spoke of William with love, pride, and deep emotion. He called him the true guardian of the modern monarchy, and said he would be a better king than he ever could be. But the moment that drew silence, true, heavy, tearful silence, was when he spoke of Diana. "I once said I wished people would forget. I was wrong, thank God they didn't. She still lives in the eyes of the woman William chose, in the kindness she left behind. And maybe that's how we heal." One aide later said, "It was the first time I saw him speak about Diana without defensiveness, just acceptance." He ended his farewell with a single line that will be etched in royal history. "I hope history is kinder to me than my reign was to itself." And with that, King Charles bowed his head, not as a monarch, but as a man, a father, a husband, a son, and for the first time the staff applauded, not out of obligation, but emotion. Many wept. As the room emptied, Charles remained alone, looking out across the palace garden. Later that night he retreated to Highgrove House, choosing not to return to Buckingham, and he hasn't been seen publicly since. His final words weren't broadcasted live, but within hours they spread like wildfire, because what people heard in that room wasn't just the end of a reign. It was the release of a soul that had waited too long to breathe. Public reaction, a nation divided. As the sun rose the morning after the abdication, the United Kingdom awoke to a monarchy forever changed, and the people, they were divided, but not indifferent. Some gathered outside Buckingham Palace holding flowers and thank you notes addressed to Charles. Others lit candles outside Clarence House, whispering prayers and shedding tears for a man they believed had tried and suffered. But across the country, especially among younger generations and long-time Diana loyalists, the mood was very different. In Manchester, protesters held signs that read, "Justice for Diana. Let William reign. It should have been her." Outside Parliament, a massive banner unfurled with just one phrase, "The future has arrived." Social media erupted the hashtags King Charles, Legacy trash new era royalty and House Queen Catherine now began trending globally. Posts poured in both praising Charles's humanity and criticizing his reign as too little too late. One viral tweet read, "He waited a lifetime to be king, but history wouldn't wait with him." Another simply said, "Diana won within 24 hours." A YouGov flash poll revealed a staggering 80% support for William and Catherine's ascension, with Catherine alone earning a 94% favorability rating. Even longtime critics of the monarchy admitted this shift felt right. In contrast, Camilla's public standing plummeted. Editorials across the Commonwealth questioned her continued presence at royal properties. Petitions circulated demanding she be stripped of all titles, gathering over 1.5 million signatures in just 2 days. Still, not everyone cheered. Older generations who had followed Charles since his days as Prince of Wales felt sympathy. The commentators described the abdication as the fall of a man who never escaped his past. Newspapers were split. The Times called it a humble exit, while the Mirror declared a throne delayed is a throne denied. And in between both camps stood a single truth: the monarchy had changed forever. The king who waited too long had stepped aside, and the people were already looking to the next chapter, one that began not with ceremony, but with reckoning. William and Catherine's first move as future king and queen. As the dust of abdication settled over Buckingham Palace, one couple stood quietly, already reshaping the monarchy's future. The announcement came swiftly. Prince William was to serve as Prince Regent, assuming full royal duties until his official coronation. Beside him, Catherine, Princess of Wales, now publicly recognized as Britain's next queen. The moment wasn't allowed. There were no grand speeches or televised declarations, just one dignified, carefully worded statement issued from Kensington Palace. "We step forward with unity, humility, and service above all. We carry our past with honor and our future with purpose." Within hours, the monarchy felt different. William and Catherine's first act, a private meeting with Parliament officials and Commonwealth envoys. Insiders described the meeting as visionary and inclusive, with William making clear that he wanted his reign to be about healing inside the family and across the nation. Catherine, meanwhile, was already moving behind the scenes. She held meetings with royal dressmakers to discuss her coronation wardrobe, with reports confirming new regalia would reflect both legacy and maternity. The queen consort robes worn by Camilla would not be reused. Instead, Catherine's ceremonial look would incorporate a new royal crest, one that merged the Lion of England with the rose of Princess Diana, a symbol of continuity and closure. But it wasn't just appearances. Sources say Catherine personally reached out to her team, instructing them to begin drafting a service project that will launch alongside the coronation, focused on children's mental health and family rebuilding. The initiative, one aide confirmed, would carry forward Diana's work in a 21st century world. Public response to the couple's early moves was immediate, and overwhelming crowds formed outside Kensington Palace, not in protest, but in celebration. Children held him and made crowns. Adults brought flowers and handwritten notes addressed simply to our king and queen. Social media posts echoed a new narrative, one that had long lived in the hearts of the public, but now was spoken openly. This is what Diana would have wanted. And for once, the royal family didn't fight that sentiment. They embraced it. In their first official photo after Charles's abdication, William and Catherine stood on the steps of Windsor Castle. He wore his standard navy suit, she a modest cream dress with sapphire earrings, Diana's earrings. Their hands were clasped, their expressions were solemn but warm. The photo caption read simply, "A new chapter begins." But little did they know a letter written almost 30 years ago was about to remind them the past wasn't finished yet. The letter from Princess Diana that haunted the decision. It was tucked away in a locked keepsake box, unread, undisturbed, untouched, until now. A letter written by Diana in the summer of 1996, just weeks before her divorce from Prince Charles was finalized and months before her life was cut tragically short. It was a draw. Best only. To my boys, and for decades it had remained in William's possession, hidden from public view and, more importantly, hidden from his father, until the night before Charles made the final decision to abdicate. Sources say William arrived at High Growth unannounced and with open hand. He didn't speak much. He placed the letter on his father's desk and simply said, "She wrote this for us, for this moment." Then he left. What happened next changed everything. Charles reportedly read the letter alone in his study. Staff heard no sound for over an hour. No movement, just silence. But when he finally emerged, his eyes were red, his hands were shaking, and he whispered just one line. It's her final whisper, and she's right. According to Palace insiders, the letter was deeply emotional, but also practical. Diana wrote about the dangers of ego, the illusion of control, and her fears about a future where love is replaced by protocol. She warned about Camilla, his influence not as a person but as a symbol. If the future queen forget the past queen's tears, the people will never accept the throne. And she closed the letter with a heartbreaking sentence that now feels prophetic. If you are reading this, my sons, then the monarchy stands at a cliff, and the wind must choose which name it carries forward. That sentence was all it took. The next morning, Charles called his private secretary and asked for a final version of the abdication statement. And just like that, a letter hidden for decades, written in heartbreak and hope, brought closer to the longest waiting reign in royal history. Diana hadn't just spoken to